I get asked a lot about how I got interested in death and how I pursued this as a career, what made me even go there. And recently I was on a TV show called The Doctors, and they asked me the same question. And this sort of autobiographic video I put together demonstrates that, sort of explains the whole thing, I think.
Everyone, please welcome Scott Michaels to the show. And Scott, there's no doubt that there seems to be this pervasive fascination with death, and you described your own fascination. How did that start for you?
I was sort of exposed to this from a young age. I grew up in Detroit. I grew up on a corner at an intersection where fatal accidents happened. It was a dangerous traffic corner. And it was something that, it was a normal part of our life. I didn't know it to be any different, to people be killed in front of my house. Over the years, I've known people that have been murdered, about 5 people that have been murdered, personally knew them. And I'm not saying that to be dangerous, it's just the way it was. I didn't know anything differently. So I was sort of desensitized from an early age. Now
this house is right around the corner from where I grew up. And this was another one of those very influential moments of my life. I'm not going to say the family name of the people who lived here, but their name started with a K. And this had to have been late 60s that their house was being renovated. They were putting like a family room on the back of it. And Mrs. K was robbed. Now, this is a mysterious story to me. I was quite confident in what happened, and I've always carried that story, that she was hit in the head with a sock full of nails by one of the workmen. That's what I was always told, or that's the story we always knew. And I remember her, she was like bedridden for a few days because of that. Because I didn't know what happened, it was the first time crime really touched my family. And it was right about the time, seriously, that Manson was being, it was either when they were convicted or when they became eligible for parole, which was only a couple of years later. It makes more sense to be that. But the possibility of Manson coming out on parole, and because of this, it really freaked me out. Like, this is when I got like the vision of Manson breaking into my house or crawling up the side of my house to kill me, because of, it just, like I said, it was the first time crime really touched me, and somebody I knew got hit or beat or something like that, and it was Mrs. K who lived in that house. It was a haunting image, just sock with the nails. But I'm going to show you where I grew up. Now we're on the corner of East Outer Drive and Whittier. And that is the house I grew up in, 12001 East Outer Drive. And that was my mom and dad's bedroom right in the front. And my bedroom was actually, there's like a turret-y thing up there, what do you call it, gables, that sort of thing up there. And I remember our neighbors there got their window shot out one time because one of the kids that lived there wasn't of the utmost of respectability, and neither is that house. That house on the corner, that stucco house in the middle of Detroit, this older couple used to live there, and they took very good care of that house. And they're always repairing it. And then it went to a couple of other places, and there was a gang member that lived there. And again, my mother was out looking out the dining room window and saw somebody come and shoot up that house. And it was in disrepair for the longest time. And but it looks like it's in pretty good shape right now compared to what it used to look like. But I always say that I lived on a very dangerous intersection, and this is it. Now, it doesn't look like much, but if you look, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roads that all intersect at this. And then the middle of it is that circular island. Now, what caused the accidents to happen was people coming up that street towards us. They come up this way. There was no stop sign on the other corner. You can't see that from here, but there was no stop sign. So people come flying through here, and they wouldn't know that this changes right here. And they would either drive right into that thing, or somebody would T-bone them here or there. So, like I said, it doesn't look like a very imposing intersection. I remember one time where there was they would always haul the accident cars away, and it was like the next day that they'd come and pick them up. And there was, for some reason, there was a car parked over there for a really long time. And they didn't know there was a lady still in it. Like, when cars' back seats used to be able to lift them up so you could get back to the trunk, she like slid back there, and she was dead for a really long time. But all these old crash cars would be all around parked here after accidents. One time, a guy was coming. Where could he have been coming from? I don't know, probably from over in this direction, coming in this direction, but drove literally into that house, right where I'm pointing now. The car literally drove into their living room while they were in their living room, like sitting on the sofa. So I'm gonna go look at it. I got a good look at this house. I haven't seen it in many years. You ever see that picture? Well, I'll show it to you. Of all of us, my brother and sisters and I, sitting on the sofa looking out that window, and what we would do is just sit there and watch the accidents happen in front of us. And when it was winter and the roads were all slick, we could tell if the cars were coming in this direction, if they would be able to stop in time. And we were like, here comes one now, and we watch it, and sure as shit, it would hit another car right in front of us. That was like a regular activity for us, was sitting and watching the accidents on this street. I always said you can almost tell if there's going to be any impact by the screech, and I think that's true. But there's my old bedroom up there. One time for Halloween, no, I did it for a few times actually. I stuffed clothes on Halloween and literally with a noose hung somebody from that porch. A couple of times for Halloween, and I realized exactly how disturbing that actually was to people. The garden hose is still there. So I moved out here when I was about 24, so it's like 36 years since I've lived in this house. And that mosaic I have of the car accident glass, this is...
Now, my mom, a homemaker raising 4 kids, she was looking for an outlet, so she painted. She wasn't an artist, she just liked doing this as a hobby. And she made mosaics. And it wasn't until much later on that I realized it was, she was making this wonderful Three Kings mosaic that is made out of car accident glass. Now, it wasn't contrived. It wasn't, let's do something really weird here. It was something like, I need mirror, I need white glass. This is back when headlights were glass and taillights were red glass. She said, I need red glass. So we go out into the corner and pick up this, the red glass out of the gutter and give it to her, and she made it. So it was sort of, just a part of our life growing up. I was desensitized or exposed to it from an early age.
Glass, this is where we had it. There was a worse curb here back then, but my mom would say, we need red glass, and I'd come out here and I'd pick it off the street right here. So now you can see probably from this way how easy it would be for a car in this direction, especially when there wasn't the stop sign behind me. People would be going 30, 40 miles an hour and not realize. There's not even a sign on that island anymore that said, split traffic or be careful up there. So yeah. The garage has a locked door on it. I guess it would be. We've had bikes stolen out of there. And then the alleys. The city of Detroit gave the alleys away. God, my brother used to work on his cars right here. Oh, man. And then the neighbors over here, these guys had a garage back there that burned down, and they were going to blame me, but I was gone because they didn't like me. They didn't like any of us. But anyway, wow, it's cool to see this. The whole addition is new. Before that Dutch elm disease destroyed all the gorgeous elm trees on this street, this whole tree was lined with giant elm trees all the way down. It was like a cathedral, and they took them all. Oh, but this place right here where we are right now is where I got hit by a car. So my friend Andrea and I were playing tag right over here, and I ran without looking. I got right here, and it was right there that I was hit by a car coming in that direction. And I remember exactly when it happened, and I remember literally flying through the air and thinking I was in a dream or something, and I landed on the other side over there. I didn't have any head injuries or anything, but it's the only time I've ever been in an ambulance. They picked me up and took me over to St. John's, and I was in a cast for, I don't know, a couple of months. But this is where I got hit by a car. Nice trip down memory lane. Probably won't ever do it again.
I recently attended a high school reunion back in Michigan, And when I walked in the door, I was sort of surprised by this table with portraits of all former classmates who I either liked or hated, all who have passed away since I graduated in 1980. And one of them in particular, her name was Kim Grimm, sort of prompted this video, my trip down horrific memory lane back in Detroit when I was growing up.
That used to be Harper Sports Shop, where we bought all our baseball gear and everything like that. Corner of Harper and Cadieux. This Rite Aid used to be called Wrigley's Drug Store, and right over here was a furniture store. And something happened in front of this furniture store. This is one of my old school photographs with all my classmates, 73, 74, Stellwagen School. And when I point out this girl, her name was Kimberly Grimm. And Kim Grimm, here's Paul, my friend Paul, still friends with him. I looked on the back of this really recently, I forgot all about it, but I had all my classmates sign this. And there's Kimberly Grimm right there, who signed this thing. And in front of this furniture store where we are right now is where Kimberly Grimm was murdered. And I found this old newspaper article, and I'll play it, or I'll read this for you right now. This is where it took place, in front of this furniture store. This is March 3rd, 1986. It says, a man kills woman and then self. A man shot and killed a woman in a car parked on a busy east side street Saturday afternoon, then fatally shot himself. Richard Long of the 17100 block of Munich, which is not far from here, and Kimberly Grimm of Chandler Park Drive, which is not far from here, arrived dead on arrival at St. John's Hospital, which is not far from here as well either, where I was taken after I broke my leg. Police said they were arguing in a car parked in front of an appliance and furniture store at Harper near Cadieux, 3 p.m., probably March 2nd, 1986. In fact, that's what her obituary says. Her funeral was actually handled out of a funeral home, which is right around the corner, Eppens Vandewey, at just about probably 30 yards from where she was actually murdered. And then her boyfriend turned the gun on himself in a car parked right here in front of what was a furniture store and old Wrigley's Drug Store. So Kimberly Grimm is one of the people I know that had been murdered, and we're going to a couple of other locations right now. Continuing my tour of Detroit, this was actually a bridge, a footbridge that went across I-94. So you could see the other side of it too, where the guardrails are over there. So this was, you could just walk across. It was right over here that I broke my arm and my leg when I was hanging off the bridge. Not over the freeway, but I was hanging on the steel fence over the bridge, and I slipped and fell and landed. Then I walked home from here on my broken arm, on my broken foot, and which wasn't nice, but that was painful. But over here, where this empty lot is, this used to be a Dairy Queen, and then it became a place called the Dairy Bar because Dairy Queen took away, I guess, their licensing, because the lady that worked in here, Vicky, they say that she used to cross the fence over there and take all the old banana boats from the old banana splits and wash them out and use them over again. So that was the rumor, that they got rid of the Dairy Queen because of that. And then it became this Dairy Bar. And I worked here for a couple of years when I was a senior in high school. But one of the coolest places was a restaurant right over there called the Golden Buddha. They had one of the best neon signs ever. I don't know what happened to that neon sign, but this is what this is their matchbook that I found online. They had very cool tropical drinks, and my mom and dad used to love it there. Almond chicken. This murder really freaked us out. This was something that was out of nowhere. St. Matthew's Church, where we went to school and church, is only a couple of blocks from here, and this woman's body was found right back here. Now, mystery woman found dead in the alley. The date on this thing was November 24th, 1974, so I was 12 when it happened. It says in police headquarters file, she's listed only as unknown woman at number 67. But to homicide detectives, the elderly woman whose body was found in an alley Thursday morning is an unusually baffling case. 2 days after an 11-year-old schoolboy on his way to school discovered the body, detectives still cannot identify the woman. So, as you can see, that's the school he was heading to. So that morning, he's discovered the body here. She might have been murdered or she might have died of natural causes, but until her medical history is known, police cannot be sure. There's no follow-up to this. And I just never understood. The boy came through the alley between 10 and 15 minutes after some men from an auto parts store drove through it. There's about 3 auto parts stores right around here. It might have been, I think this was an auto parts store over this way too, this brick building, so it might have been that one. They saw nothing there when they drove through shortly after 8 a.m. The woman was white and about 65 years old, wearing a brown cashmere coat, a yellow cardigan sweater, a blue dress with white stripes. And they said that they went to the church nearby. We checked St. Matthew's Church because they had morning church services every day. We checked that the priest there and others with the church said they didn't know her. Whenever the police find an unidentified woman like this, a relative or friend will file a missing persons report within a day. It's highly unusual that someone like this, who is obviously not a derelict, remains unknown. So she suffered from a heart condition caused by a faulty heart valve, but failed to indicate cause of death. That's what they say. So this is where that happened. Never been solved. I've looked for more information about this, but this picture alone is pretty haunting, and that's all we know of this woman, this dead body who was found right back here. Behind me is the old Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't know when it closed. I have no idea. But I think this may be where my obsession with Colonel Sanders began. That and my father putting on a mask and scaring the hell out of us when I was a kid. But this Kentucky Fried Chicken had something. There was a girl that I went to school with. Her name was Cheryl McCartney, and she worked here. And what happened to her is pretty crazy. Now we're talking 1977, so I don't know how old I was, 13 years old, I think. And Cheryl was working here. I'll read this to you. According to a witness, Miss McCartney, a $2.50 an hour clerk in the Kentucky Fried Chicken outlet on a commercial strip of East Warren, that's the street we're on right now, just inside Detroit City, was murdered for no apparent reason. Witnesses testified that her killer, who walked right into the brightly lit shop on a Sunday night, said nothing, aimed a .38 pistol at her head and pulled the trigger. Then, as horrified employees hit the floor, he rifled the cash register of less than $100. Cheryl lingered in critical condition for nearly 24 hours before she died at St. John's Hospital, a few miles from here, which is the same hospital I mentioned a little while ago. The cold-bloodedness of her murder angered local merchants who demanded and received stepped-up police protection. The killers were arrested. One of them was actually put out on bail, I think, and when finally released, I think one died in prison. But there was a young couple that took off from the restaurant moments before the slaying and might be able to help the police. This is back, but the man was identified and still alive, too. But this was bad because that was one of the first times when Kim Grimm got murdered. That was well after school, you know. But this happened in '77 while I was still in grade school, and now it was really disturbing. It was a very disturbing thing to happen. And Kentucky Fried Chicken. So we're leaving the Kentucky Fried Chicken there, and we're heading to another place that terrified me when I was young. Another story. It's only a few blocks from here, or where it began. It's only a few blocks from here. This next case was something that hit us pretty close to home, literally close to home, and her name was Susan Asaro. And the night she was murdered, actually, She was working at this place called Mr. C's at the time. It was like one of the first delis that made real pizza. This place was really popular, and she was working here. And she left work here and was heading home and never made it home. She got off work and she left shortly after midnight, but they couldn't take it. The family called the police, but they wouldn't take a missing persons report because she wasn't gone for 24 hours yet. Now, the really fucked up thing is that her brother was concerned for her and followed her home. And when he got to the corner where she lived, he, basically waved and said goodbye, and she got out of her car in front of the house and was abducted there. So it was messed up, really messed up, and not even as messed up as it's gonna get. Gosh, that was a Pizza Hut. I don't even remember what that was. That used to be a manufacturer's bank. This area, man, this was something when I was growing up. My first bank account, Standard Federal. This intersection up here is the Elger Theater. I was a projectionist there for a long time, and recently on my birthday, my brother and sisters actually rented out the marquee and put a birthday message on it. That used to be Cunningham's drugstore. The red carpet, saw some good bands in there. Used to be BJ's restaurant over there. After our paper routes, we used to go get dinner there, burgers. Wow. Oh, they must be. Oh, it's a good thing actually what they're doing right here. They're renovating this area. The old Rosendoms. There used to be a Hungry Penguin fish and chips place right there. That church used to be where I was in Boy Scouts, Troop 250. The dentist from hell was on that corner on the right, still there too. His name was Dr. Hoy. That's a guy with bad breath and no Novocaine, and would drill the hell out of our teeth, man. That was awful. I still remember that bad breath, the smoker's breath. Awful, awful, awful. Even my parents went, no, you're right, that was awful. I'm heading to where Susan Asaro lived, where she never got there. Yeah. Welcome to my neighborhood. See, some of these houses are very well cared for. So this is the intersection of Weyburn and Waveney up ahead of us. And according to this map, it's very difficult to distinguish what exactly was the home that they lived in. She lived on Waveney, which is this street, where she pulled up into her driveway, driving her Gremlin, and was abducted from this intersection. So her brother and sister left the liquor store. He followed her. She had cashed a $130 check. She bought milk and bread to go home. He followed her for a while, then they separated. She got to her house, got in the driveway, and was abducted from this intersection. I'm guessing it was on this side. Might be one of these houses where it used to be, but my guess is from the map it's right over here. And now we're going to where the car was found, burning. In front of me is the intersection of Dickerson and Essex. And this is actually one of the nice things about seeing Detroit coming back. Up there is a new community with a gate. This is a new school. So there's a lot of new development going over here. But the night after Susan Asaro was abducted, the police the fire department found her car on fire in an empty lot at this intersection. Now, as you could see, there is an empty lot there, and probably all four of those corners up there were empty lots at that point in time. The family could not file a missing persons report until 24 hours had passed. In the meantime, her car was on fire here, and the fire department and the police department didn't put together the vehicle and the murder of Susan Asaro until somebody cracked and turned him over. So we're heading to where Susan Asaro was murdered. All of these amazing houses used to be where these lots are now. Andrew Jackson School. All these empty lots, just incredible houses, brick houses. So we're on a street called Algonquin, right off Mack Avenue, and those vacant lots that you see right over there, one of them had the house at 4110 Algonquin where Susan Asaro was murdered. Now, as I said before, she got off work at Mr. C's Delicatessen, and her brother followed her for several blocks, and they split off, and she got abducted. She was driving a Gremlin. And she was taken to the house that was there. Now, she had a problem seeing. She wore glasses, and she begged for her life. According to this, she was only 19. She begged for her life. They robbed her of the $130 from her cash paycheck, and her. And she lost her glasses, and she said, "I can't identify you anyway. I can't see you. I won't do it." But they ended up pulling a 38 on her, and there was no heat in the house. It was a vacant house, and they threw a mattress on top of her, and she froze. You know, after she was murdered, she was literally frozen here. Now, two people were finally arrested for this, Ladd and Curtis Pete. They had previously raped a woman, and on the same street, actually, that Susan Asaro lived in. That woman was abducted off of that street, too, and taken to a place and that woman was getting out of her car. She had two kids in her car, and they forced her back into the car and drove around while they took turns on her. Horrible stories. But Susan Asaro was back here. Now, I can't explain why I did this. It's the first time I ever actually collected anything from a place where something horrible happened, and it was that New Year's Eve, I think. My friend Jeff and I were driving, and I wanted to see the house. I don't even know why I did it, but I had a screwdriver with me, and I got out of the car and I pried the address off the house. And that was like my first artifact from something where something horrible happened to somebody. And I still have it. I had it framed in the museum for the longest time. And I didn't really understand why I gravitated towards these things. And then I was at the King Tut exhibit. Troy and I went to the King Tut exhibit, and they had something on the wall. And it was written, and I think they said it was the ancient Egyptian saying, I don't know, but they say a person dies two times. The first time someone dies is when they physically pass away. The second time they die is the last time that person's name is said out loud. So I always felt better about having that in my shop in Los Angeles, where hundreds of people were reading this thing and mentioning her name, Susan Asaro, out loud, because they don't get forgot. So this is actually kind of funny, sort of. This old road is probably the only thing that's left here. I remember this road. This road used to run between two bars I worked in. One was called the E-Ramp, and one was called the gas station. And the E-Ramp was located right about, that could be the old alley for it, just here. I think this was the old driveway to get in. The parking was right over here. The E-Ramp was right over here. And that's where I was working one night and somebody came in, stabbed. They brought him in from the parking lot and he was stabbed. They brought him into the bar. And we had just closed up for the night. And we're just sitting there and, having drinks, and this guy comes in. They bring him from the parking lot and they're calling 911. And he's just sitting there bleeding. We're just drinking and talking. It was like, that was a red flag for me. That was when, I got to get out. I got to get out. It was, I could have been stuck here very, very easily. I wasn't in a good place. But the E-Ramp was over here. Now the gas station, the reason I came over here this time, this is where the gas station used to be. There used to be another bar there called Tubes. I forget what it was called before that, Video Bar. But the gas station, above the gas station was a bar called Heaven. And a friend of mine named Bob Lowe opened it. And the reason I came over here is because Bob Lowe is another one of the people I know that had been murdered. So the Heaven would have been literally looking at heaven above this bar. So there was a staircase behind the gas station. This is all new. This was not here, just to clarify. And so we would get into the gas station, and then there was a small stairway to heaven. Get it? Now, I'm not sure when or where he was murdered, and I've never been able to find a thing about it. But everyone I know who knew him knows the story about his murder, but nobody really knows any of the details. So
I was able to track down an article. I found a small article about Bob, or Boo Boo, as we all called him. He was murdered on June 10th of 1986. He was shot to death in his home, which was apparently, according to this article anyway, he was being burglarized and he surprised people, and that's what happened to him.
So another person I know was murdered, Bob Lowe. His old place of business where I met him and where I used to work, the gas station, is right there. And that's Woodward Avenue, and that's a 7 Mile Road that runs alongside it. 7 Mile and Woodward, and everything's gone. But there's a church there, so that's not totally bad. So Cheryl McCartney at Kentucky Fried Chicken, Kim Grimm, my friend Bob Lowe, Artie, another buddy of mine, they've all been murdered. Susan Asaro right over here, and God bless them. They always say their names out loud, never forget.